Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Of course, it's me, Only Run Very New, bringing you Bravo gameplay on the Talishar client. Today we are doing battle with Dorinthia Iron Song. Um, my plan for Dori is kind of weird because I don't know if they're on Decimator Axe or Dawnblade but when I'm sideboarding. So the way I've been playing it is I wanted to test into Dawnblade just playing all of my cards because I think playing into Decimator Great Axe, playing all of your cards is probably what you want to be doing. And honestly, into Dawnblade, it feels sort of fine too. You can fatigue the Dawnblade Dory, and you can also get away with like your two blocks because they can just be used well offensively. You can like Fate Foreseen them to the bottom, sink them to the bottom, stuff like that. You can even like use them to E-strike. So that's my plan in Adori is to just run a Nothos and all 70 of my cards. If they're on Decimator Great Axe, you can probably afford to like run only 67 instead of 70 and cut some of the cards that you think might be worse than a Dawnblade, but I don't do that. I just play all my cards and really make it difficult for them to fatigue me, which it feels like is their main plan. As we see here, we're playing against Dawnblade with Ironsong versus. So we'll see how this goes. Also, I'm not sure if I won the die roll, but if I did, I would choose to go second. So we are doing what we would want to do here. Going second gives us like the free tempo, and against Dawnblade, I think going second is better. Against Decimator Great Axe, probably going first is slightly better just to fatigue them a few cards, but not entirely sure on that. Going second and going first both have their merits. They attack us for 3 with Dawnblade. I'm just going to end up blocking 6. That way they would have to have double pump or route or something like that to leak damage here. Definitely don't want to give them free life at the beginning, so we end up just blocking with 2 cards and making them do something. Our hand here, E-strike, pummel, and 2 blues. Not great. Kind of wish we had an attack we could pummel, but we don't, so pummel is probably the card we're going to try to get in arsenal this turn. So just E-strike, go again, and then Nothos for 4 seems reasonable. We could also E-strike putting pummel on the bottom and then like a Nothos for 6, but I think pummel and arsenal is worth more than 2 more damage. Especially because we don't have tech plating, we can't like make a surge. So it really is just plus 2 damage. The old 3-card 9, perfectly on rate. Which is not really how you want to be playing it, but you know, that's what we could do. Our opponent just takes the 5 from E-strike. A little interesting. I guess they have a big hand they want to throw at us because they didn't really think that long about their blocks. And they just end up blocking 3 on our hammer. So we get in for 6 damage and we get to arsenal this pummel. I don't think that's like a terrible turn. We have a Zealous Belting and a pummel. Unfortunately, our tunic will only be on 2 counters next turn. Then we also have a Fate Foreseen and 2 blues. I think I'm looking to just try to Fate Foreseen an attack and then use Zealous Belting and a hammer. Because our arsenal is already used up, we can't put Zealous Belting in our arsenal. We don't want to block with a blue and a Fate Foreseen, because then just a blue and a Zealous Belting left over isn't good. So unfortunately, this is sort of something that Zealous Belting does to your hands, is it makes them kind of need to trade unless you have an open arsenal. They play run through. We're gonna see if we can get this Fate Foreseen online here. Fate Foreseen on the top. I'm just gonna leave it on top. And we actually do get to end their turn, which is perfect for us. I'm just going to talk a little bit about leaving Fate Foreseen on top. Leaving Fate Foreseen on top is probably something I just autopiloted into because Fate Foreseen and Sink Below are so good against Dawnblade. But I think with Pummel and Arsenal and our Tunic about to tick up, we probably don't even want the Fate Foreseen on top. We probably just want to look for a threat we can pummel, a threat we can Tunic, or something like that. Although the downsides of keeping the React aren't like immense, just because it's going to be pretty good in Dori anyway. Our turn, of course, we just throw Zealous Belting into Anothos. We get 5 damage and 2 cards out of their hand. Definitely feel good about our spot being up 11. Here we draw our, I believe this is our 3rd Zealous Belting. No, our first go again attack was an E-Strike. So our 2nd Zealous Belting, but we can't turn it on, which is really annoying. Like if one of our blues could turn it on, we could pummel the Zealous Belting off the Tunic and then even like Arsenal the Fate Foreseen is like a baseline sort of looking in our hand. Of course, our opponent is attacking with Steelblade Supremacy and Dawnblade, so we don't want that to hit. Although we could sort of bait them into popping their bolters, perhaps. Because if they pop their bolters because they want to get maximum value out of the Steelblade Supremacy, we get like an extra free point there. And that might be what I did if like instead of Warmonger's Diplomacy, we had an attack that could turn on Zealous Belting, because we'd have a really good hand and then a Fate Foreseen and Arsenal to try to get the counter off. But as it stands, maybe I just want to pummel the Zealous Belting off the Tunic, blocking with Warmonger's Diplomacy and Fate Foreseen, but that's not really great here either. If his card in Arsenal is Glint, not blocking this Dawnblade gets a little better. Certainly worse than it being nothing, though. Yeah, this is kind of a weird spot. I'm not exactly sure what I want to be doing here. I wouldn't be surprised if I tried to take some like Crown of Providence line. Unfortunately, I can't opt with Fate Foreseen before I Crown of Providence. That's something that comes up quite a bit for me. I think blocking with Crown and blocking with Warmonger's Diplomacy is fine. But then because I don't want this to be a pump, would I even crown away my Fate Foreseen, or would I just crown away my pummel? Probably just crown away pummel. Or I could just do something like that. Just saving the crown and getting rid of the Zealous Belting. I don't hate that line I took either. Interesting that I didn't even talk about that with my thought process. But yeah, just blocking 5, keeping the Fate Foreseen in case he has a pump spell. And then planning to hammer back for 4. But as we see, the Fate Foreseen that we kept on top sort of impacted our turn negatively here. Because who knows what the top card is. I guess we'll see when we draw it here. It should be the one next to Fate Foreseen, and if it's a card that turns on Zealous Belting, we really sort of got punished by not putting the Fate on the bottom. And it is the blue disable. But of course, can't be results oriented, sort of got to make decisions as they happen. But even so, we knew that even when I was discussing keeping the Fate Foreseen on top before we knew what it was, with Tunic up and Pummel and Arsenal, it seemed like a mistake. Now we're getting Command and Conquered. Some Dawnblade Dories play like a blue Pummel, which would be pretty scary here. But our hand can't really do much anyway. We draw a third Zealous Belting, but we don't have two blues. And we still have that Fate Foreseen that we can't use on this Command and Conquer, so it's really clunky. Luckily we have like such a big life lead that maybe we can just like sort of try to escape these turns without something devastating happening and just sort of stay ahead. I can't block with for 6 and then like keep an E-strike to just E-strike for 7 off of 2 reds, which is kind of annoying. So I think this is just like a crown. I think we just give him a crown and take 4, getting rid of our pummel. We draw into blue, so we can attack for 16 if we want to use our whole hand, giving Zealous Belting go again, off pitching disable, E-striking Fate Foreseen to the bottom for 5 go again, and a hammer for 6. Or we could just Zealous Belting for 5 and E-strike for 7, arsenaling Fate Foreseen. So 4 less damage, but a Fate and Arsenal. I think with the life lead, I just want to press as much damage as possible. 5 card 16 is not very good, but just getting our points where we can. Maybe the Fate Foreseen and Arsenal is better. We've already seen Command and Conquer, so we know he has 2 more in deck, which could potentially threaten our Fate Foreseen and Arsenal and make us wish that we just turn that into 4 damage instead of like 4 potential defense and like countering a react. Ooh, it looks like I am just going for the damage line, which I think I still agree with. Dealing a bunch of damage is just good. Reactions are, of course, good into Dori, but doing damage is better. Not sure why they Steelblade Shunt red on the E-strike. They must have another one for the hammer, for the follow-up hammer. I feel like they lost 3 points there, because they would have blocked 1 extra and dealt a damage to me. Yeah, so if they Oasis Spite the E-strike, they gain 1, take 1, and then take 0, deal 1, and instead no, I guess they only lost 2 points, but still, that's like 2 free points, and they definitely knew the hammer follow-up was happening because I chose go again. This is an interesting spot, but I can only play the Command and Conquer. I don't have enough resources. I guess I could use Tunic and throw Crippling Crush, pitching the others, but I think I'd rather threaten the pummel here, trying to get the crown, and then still arsenaling the Crippling Crush with a blue in hand and Tunic up. And it looks like they are afraid of the pummel. If I just throw Crippling Crush, they just block 9 and then like move on with their life. Where here we get armor, and they might not even have a 5-card hand they really can do too much with. Although big-handed Dori is scary for sure. It looks like they were digging for a blue and didn't hit. So I think I'm totally fine just blocking 6 here. And if they have Iron Song response, then I guess they have it. And this still lets us throw our Crippling Crush. Ooh, and they just can't even do anything to our block for 6. That was a very unfortunate turn cycle for them. But yeah, we're just going to use our Tunic and throw Crippling Crush here. which we would have wanted to do to like steal the tempo, even if they had a big turn. Because if they get like a Dawnblade counter, the Crippling Crush will probably make it so their next turn's not so devastating, and we can make the counter fall off. They do have Tunic up though, so we've got to be wary of Steelblade Shunt. Just being like a super efficient block. If they had Red Shunt, they could just block with like Ironsong Versus and Red Shunt and keep a big hand to follow up their potentially last big turn. But they didn't have a big turn, so it's kind of null point here. We just got very fortunate. Blocking with a card and armor and using their Tunic for something here. Maybe an Oasis Respite, maybe a blue Shunt. No, they just use a red Shunt. Not sure why they blocked with Ironsong Versus or their card. Maybe they just can't use the card, but that doesn't explain why they blocked with Versus. Maybe they're just afraid of their life total being so low. But being at 22 and 20 are basically the same thing. We have nothing we can really do with our hand. So I don't hate just blocking 6 and like preventing this courage token. I'm going to block with my weakest blues. Only one showtime in this list, so I definitely try to protect it just in case Imposing Visage comes up later. And we're just going to activate Bravo and swing our hammer for 6. They either have a reaction they want to use, or they have a very good hand that they don't want to block. They just don't block, so we got to prepare for this turn here. We have a rouse turn we would like to do. If they kept their whole hand, how should I block this 6 if it hits go again? I have to imagine they have some pump spells here that they were sure they're going to get go again. Maybe if they don't have pump spells, they have like Glint. Because I can block 6, and if they didn't have a pump spell or Glint, then they would just pass the turn and lose a bunch of life for no reason when they could have just like blocked the hammer. Maybe they want a lot of cards behind to make us be thinking about it. But with their life at 16, I really don't hate sort of turning off Reprise and just like taking 9 to 12 here to send back 13. There's no Glistening Steelblade, there's no Steelblade Supremacy, it's just like Warrior Valor Red, which is good, but it's not going to like create the kind of value he's going to need to carry over next turn to just be able to like take 13 from our Rouse play. So I think I like just kind of making him deal damage to me. And yeah, we played around a Singing Steelblade by not blocking. And yeah, I'm just going to take this 9 damage. Maybe even turning off like Ironsong Response and stuff here. Giving him a counter, but only taking 9 damage feels perfectly fine to send back 13. Because we're still up 11. Their 5-card hand seems to be hinging on us blocking for them to trigger their Reprise. That's something we can keep in mind later. Like, they probably have Ironsong Response in their arsenal or hand here. I keep the Cranial Crush, and I think I do Arsenal it, although that could probably be a mistake. My reasoning for arsenaling these blue 8s is if I ever have like bad hands where the only thing I can do is hammer for 6, at least now with 2 blues I can like throw Cranial Crush for 8. I'm not sure if that's like the greatest reasoning, especially with a low blue count. Maybe we just want to keep like the blue in our hand. We definitely want to get this counter to fall off this turn. But we have a red disable and a blue with a tunic counter, so I kind of want to keep red disable and a blue as well. So I think I'm going to block with Debilitate and Crater Fist, and then when he pumps, I can sink below and then still throw Debilitate for 8 off of the tunic. Yep, there's the Iron Song response we anticipated them having last turn. And we just get really good turn cycles. I mean, this game has gone very well for us and fairly poorly for our opponent. They kept like a big 5-card hand with a bunch of reprise that we just didn't turn on. And there was even a turn we got to keep like a Zealous Belting line without really sacrificing much. We got to just like block 3 or 4. Yeah, we got to like Fate Foreseen a Dawnblade that got like a run through plate on it, and they didn't have a pump spell to go over the top and punish us. They're blocking with their boots and they're in a shunt. They didn't need to block with boots to turn off Crush, so that leads me to believe that they want to use their boots. Ooh, Iron Song, Determination. Dominate, and we don't really have a way to get around this Dominate. Another Red's Warrior's Valor. They pitch a Remembrance, so they definitely thought that Fatigue was on the table here. We don't have a reaction in Arsenal, and our opponent knows what's in Arsenal because we revealed it to Rouse, so I think I just end up taking 4 here. And then blocking this follow-up Dawnblade, which I presume is going to happen when they pitch their last card, with Crater Fist and I think Chokeslam, just so I can throw the 8 out of my arsenal. Crush effect is usually pretty irrelevant, but they do have Steelblade Supremacy, and I think it even interacts with Stroke of Foresight Reprise in a negative way. They're just coming in for 3 with a Iron Song versus trigger. We're just going to block with Debilitate and throw Spinal Crush. Also interesting, a couple turns ago where they blocked with boots. I thought they were going to want to use it, but they didn't because they had Warrior's Valor. So here's like a dreaded 4-red hand. Luckily we have full tempo, so we still get to do something. But what red we keep for Arsenal is actually a little interesting here. With Tunic counter up, that leads me to believe I kind of want Crippling Crush. But then, of course, Fate Foreseen and Arsenal is very good against Dori. They did show us a Command and Conquer earlier, though, so maybe we don't want Fate Foreseen and Arsenal for, like, their potential Command and Conquer. And with their life so low, I think throwing Crippling Crush is better than, like, protecting myself from a big turn. So I think I'm going to Command and Conquer, pitching Fate Foreseen and Command and Conquer here. I don't think keeping Command and Conquer in Arsenal is like a choice here, but it's also fairly good off of the Tunic if we draw a Pummel, but that requires more going right than us just drawing 2 blues for a Crippling Crush. And we draw 2 blues, so our Crippling Crush is ready to go. We can block 7. This is a little awkward. I think I'm just going to sink below though. Oh no, I'm not. Let's talk about this a little. I think just blocking with sink below and making them use like a pump spell or something to get their courage token is fine, because we could throw Crippling Crush and then have a Spinal Crush and Arsenal, where with the line you see me take, Spinal Crush plus Civic Steps, we're going to have like a Sink Blown Arsenal if this block works. The thing is, if they pump over this block, we can use our Sink Below to not give them any value and then throw Crippling Crush, which is probably what I was thinking. But I think having the threat for Arsenal is better, and letting them deal like a little bit of damage if they want to go over our Sink Below is also fine. Because we have to use Sink Below just to stop 2 damage here. I guess we stop them from having Bolter's value, and if we can get them dead before they get to use Bolters, that's pretty good. Because if I just blocked with Sink, the Iron Song response over the top, deal 3, I go to 20. Was that Iron Song response in Arsenal? Yeah, Iron Song response from Arsenal, so I go to 20. Oh, and then they could still just like pop Bolters, use Tunic to swing Dawnblade for 4 thanks to the Courage token. And then I'm in a little bit of trouble. I would just have to block with the Spinal Crush and the Civic Steps anyway to keep the counter off if I wanted to do that. So yeah, maybe me in the past was thinking it through a little more than me right now. But them having a Tunic counter is not even, or not a Tunic counter, a Dawnblade counter is not even like that crazy, because we're Crippling Crushing them, and it's probably going to require 3 cards, or them block with their Tunic. There's that blue pummel we anticipated earlier. They just end up blocking 11 to protect their life total, which seems reasonable. And if we had the Spinal Crush and Arsenal, we'd feel a lot better here. Now we kind of got to like rip a threat. We sort of do. We don't have 2 blues to make like the hammer for 6, or 2 blues to like make hammer for 10 with pummel, and then like Arsenal, whatever, whichever red we would have kept. But we do get to E-Strike Go again, Anothos for 4, and then Arsenal either pummel or Sink Below. And I think I want to just Arsenal pummel over Sink Below here. I bottom the pummel to keep the Sink Below. I think with them at low life total here, and presumably going to be blocking, I would rather have the threat in Arsenal than Sink Below for the same reasons the last turn. I would have rather had the Spinal Crush instead of the Favor Scene, or Sink Below, or whatever it was. Because while the Sink Below can protect us, it's not really going to help us win this game, I don't think. It doesn't do any damage, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, with no Tunic counter or Sink Below, maybe could like help us protect 3 blues and a Crippling Crush or something like that. That's exactly what we draw. Okay. Yeah, I really, really like the Sink Below in Arsenal now. Although I guess if it was pummel, I could just like take this damage and then... Oh, what am I doing? Why would I block here? Why wouldn't I just Sink Below, turning off Reprise, even turning off this card, potentially, and then just like dominate Crippling Crush? I have no clue what I was thinking there. It seems so obvious. And now I'm going to use Sink Below to stop the counter from staying. And then I'm going to hammer for 6 and arsenal the Crippling Crush, awaiting our third tunic counter. But I think that line's just like, even without knowing they have the aura that gives a counter, just sink below and dominating Crippling Crush seems like way better with them having basically no armor. Maybe I didn't want to dominate a Crippling Crush when they had Tunic up for Steelblade Shunt. Here's another low resource hand we have. So he's coming in for 3. Go again off the hit and run. It leads me to believe there's an Iron Song response here because he doesn't want to get this just blocked for 3. If his whole turn gets stopped by block for 3, that seems really bad for him. But I don't have too many choices here. I think I probably just block with Debilitate and make him have Iron Song response, even though I'm pretty sure that's what it should be. I guess it could be a 1-cost pump as well because they have Tunic up. They could just like 1-cost pump me. I guess it could be Glint as well. That seems very risky though. I don't think I should be putting them on Glint there at all for like double go again and maybe draw a pump off the top. It should have been, I think the read should have been a pump spell that cost a 1 or 0. But there wasn't too much we could do if we blocked 6. So here at least we can use Tunic and Debilitate for 8. I guess we could have pitched our whole hand to like Anothos for 6 and save the Tunic for our Crippling Crush in Arsenal. Which might have been better. Because they can't just take 6 because they die. Yeah, I think keeping Tunic for the Crippling Crush would have been better. And just pitching my whole hand there because I don't want to keep the pommel behind. Just pitching my whole hand to hammer for 6. They Emboldened Blade. And I'm just going to dominate this Crippling Crush here. They just Emboldened Blade pass instead of like Tunic Dawnblade. Yeah, that was kind of a weird game. I've gotten some questions for showing Dawnblade Dori though, and that's why I wanted to bring this game. It's one of the only Dawnblade Dori games I have recorded for for weeks, and I didn't want to. I've actually deleted a bunch of my old games because I feel like they're so old that it's not even like I'm not even playing those builds anymore. So why would I show those videos? But yeah, this was the only Dawnblade Dori video I had to show. And I wanted to show my sideboard plans and sort of like my thought process and play patterns. Dori can be kind of weird because they really make you think about what they could have. And usually I make a couple errors against Dawnblade Dori just because, like, I'm obviously not trying to make errors, but it's really hard to play around everything. And maybe there's just like a really high mental stack that when I rewatch my videos, I'm just kind of like, what was I thinking about when I made that play? Because it just seems very odd to me watching myself play against Dori. So maybe that's something I need to work on. Maybe that's something you guys have good grasp over, and you could leave a comment down below about how you approach this matchup and how you ease the mental stack of their whole deck literally being combat tricks that they can play. Maybe you organize them into groups of like, they have a bunch of different cards that are just +3, or like maybe you have some way to simplify like the ways they give go again and how they punish your different blocks. I'd love to hear from you guys. So thanks for watching, and until next time, have a good one.